Welcome to Bunch Formation, the newest college football podcast. My name is Chris Vannini. We want to wish everybody an early happy 4th of July weekend. Hope you're out there with the family, maybe on a lake or doing something, enjoying the weekend. He is David Ubben.
Guys, a wise person once told me that this weekend will be the last weekend that some Americans have all 10 fingers. Don't let it be you. Don't let it be you. By the way, we are joined by a very special guest. It's been a long time coming. You can probably see him, Ari Wasserman. Ari, you once friend, now foe, now chief rival. I wake up every morning with Ari's face on my wall. I'm just looking to beat the Ari and Andy show. No, Ari, welcome to the show.
Feels good to be back. I thought you were going to introduce it as Until Saturday. Can I ask you guys a question before we get into football? You know how everybody makes that joke about like the fingers and like how people are going to lose their fingers?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where do the people even acquire the fireworks that are powerful enough to actually hurt you? Because
if you held a black cat, that would be plenty to do.
I know, but like, are those even like legal? Can you buy? Where do you buy those?
There's tents and stuff. There's lots.
Do you not see the shops? The shops Ari around the area here in Dallas? Do you ever see those on the side of the road?
I just figure that they're like selling like little kid stuff. Like, I don't know. Like,
no, it's real stuff. I mean, it's not like weapons grade explosives, but if you had a solid, not the little water dynamite, like the little firecrackers, but like, you know, like a bigger black cat and you didn't throw it in time or someone threw it at you. Never been a bottle rocket fight guy. I don't get that at all. I'm not going to fight with bottle rockets, but a lot of people did this back in the day. I don't get that. I'm not that adventurous, you know, call me weak, whatever, but I'm not into it.
I've never lit a firecracker before, but I don't understand the point of
I haven't either.
Ones, like the little ones, like either do it big or don't do it. Like, and I've never found a place to buy. I was at Home Depot trying to do something buy something to do at my house, which was my worst nightmare. And I saw like a pack for $34.99. I'm like, who's paying $34.99 for all these little firecrackers? Like, what are we doing?
My dad went through a stage. He doesn't do it as much anymore, but pretty much from the time I was like 12 until I like went to college, where he was buying the like big $250 kit, like the shells that come with the tube, and it looks like professional fireworks, except you like light it off. How have you guys never lit a? What are you talking about? What is happening?
I grew up in suburban Detroit. Ari's from Scottsdale. I don't know. You growing up in Arkansas had something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, like when I grew up, like lighting fireworks was like a literal like safety hazard for the community. Yeah. So, like, it wasn't like as popular for me. I mean, you're like aware of what's going on in California. I don't want to derail your podcast, but like that's like lighting firecrackers in Scottsdale and it like landing in the desert somewhere like could like create a huge fire.
I have conservatively lit over 1,000 firecrackers. Any sort of in my lifetime.
That's like, a lot of firecrackers, dude.
Well, that's a lot for every year.
Did your town have a fireworks show? Because that's what we just did. We just went to the one in town.
Kinda, but we just bought a bunch, and like until I was in like 6th grade, we lived on like 7 acres, so we had like a bunch of land, and we would like shoot it out there. But we always had like a place we could go to like shoot stuff. So you guys ever played with like water dynamite, where you have firecrackers you throw in a pond?
Chris and Dave.
I feel like I grew up in an alternate dimension from you guys.
I just wanted to remind you guys what it felt like to podcast with me because we're 4 minutes in and we haven't even said the word football, and I just wanted it to feel like normal. So I don't want to derail your show.
Uniquely talented at unearthing insane facts from people, like the fact that I'm doing a podcast with people who've never lit a firecracker before. That's insane.
I mean, I think it's more insane to have lit 1,000. On the scale
we would do a bunch of firecrackers, and then the next morning I'd have to go in the yard and like clean up all the stuff, and
this is fascinating. No, I've never. Also, the previous episode, Ari, that Ubben went on like a 7-minute rant about Blippi and at a baseball game. So we are getting a little bit off track with the start of these shows, but it's good to see you. For those who don't know, Ari Wasserman with On3 with the Andy and Ari podcast, our former coworker at the Athletic, our friend.
Yes,
Ari and I live near each other, and we hang out at the mall every couple of weeks in the off season, which is fun. So We need to go golfing at some point. And Ari, you're going to need to come up here soon and bring your daughter to see the puppies.
I will.
They are 5 weeks old now.
Yeah. I'll do that. It's been a while since I've been up there. Sounds like a good time. So what do we have today, boys? Let's talk about football. Let's make people
for folks, go to the show notes for the timestamps and everything on the show. If you want us to hear anything, send us feedback to bunchformationpod@gmail.com. Bunch Formation on all the social media, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. Send in a 5-star review. We will read it on the show.
Bunch Formation, more like a bunch of firecracker amateurs over here. Anyway.
I know, no kidding. So we're going to talk about a couple things here with We're going to talk about Jeremiah Smith, the Ohio State wide receiver who guaranteed victory over Michigan for the rest of his career. We're going to talk about something that is near and dear to Ari's heart, which is the college football playoff and the potential further expansion, and what Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti said about that the other day. And I think we're going to put all that in the Say What segment. So we're going to go back to that.
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now.
And we're going to start with Jeremiah Smith, who talked to the Athletics, our colleague Manny Navarro, about numerous things. Among them, the Michigan game, to which he said, quote, "I'm not a sore loser, but I hate losing, and losing to that team up north was pretty crazy. In the end, I think it really helped us play the way we did in the playoffs, but I didn't want to go to Ohio State and lose to that team up north. I just hate them, just something about them. For the next 2 years, I promise you, I will not lose to them. I can't lose to them in the next 2 years." We've had some awesome quotes from players these last couple of weeks, like
shout out to the agents
guaranteeing wins and talking trash about former teammates. I love this. Ubben, start with you. We'll get to Ari. Ari wrote a column about this for On3, but Ubben, first reaction when you saw this?
My first reaction is that I would pay a lot of money to conduct a dramatic reading of these quotes in Ryan Day's office to Ryan Day for the first time. That would be very funny to me. I mean, as if there wasn't already enough pressure on this thing. I think I'm not going to ding a guy for honesty, and I think he feels that way, and I'm sure he does. I think functionally and pragmatically, I don't know that it was the wisest move, even for a player of Jeremiah Smith's caliber. It's just there's so much pressure already on that game. You've added another additional amount of pressure that I don't know necessarily ups your percentages of winning that game. But, you know, Ari, you're the authority on this rivalry. We'll get into that in a little bit. I mean, what did you make of Jeremiah Smith going out on a limb like this, the best player, I think, in college football coming into this season?
Yeah. You know, you guys know I covered this rivalry for a decade of my life. And somebody pops off every offseason about it at some point, whether it's a recruit or a player or a coach or somebody says something.
Jim Tressel famously when he got the job.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember when J.J. McCarthy was a recruit and he said, we're going to change the rivalry. And I'm like, it's like, this is, you know, and I think that really it gets to the heart of the reality of it, which is the rivalry means a hell of a lot to people. It does. And even though Ohio State won a national championship, like, you know that there are players who were celebrating, who are now in the NFL or who are returning, that still think about losing to Michigan, because that's like, I mean, I think that there's this notion out there that like, who cares, the expanded playoff, you can lose that game and still go into it and win the championship like Ohio State did. The game doesn't matter anymore. And it's like, that's obviously one of my biggest fears as it pertains to just the reorganization of the postseason, which I'm sure we're going to get into today. But I also think that the beauty of the Ohio State-Michigan game is that it prevails. And it's not more important than the national championship, but it's important enough to think about, even in a year in which you're defending your title. So I think that if anybody is going to open their mouth and say something, it's the best player in college football to do that. And I also think it speaks to what it means to him. And I think if you're an Ohio State fan or even a Michigan fan, you can appreciate, and the hope is that on both sides of it, that you can come together and agree that this rivalry should be held to a higher esteem, that the winning it should matter no matter what it means for the postseason. So that's what I took away from it. And then also too, I wrote a column and it felt kind of weird quoting somebody that was quoted in The Athletic, but I guess that's what's going to happen these days if I'm not at OT7. That like his promise Jeremiah Smith's promise is like the unfulfilled duty or obligation that Ryan Day still has as the coach.
Yep.
Because I think that like everybody, and maybe this is the right thing, is like, oh, he won the national championship and he won all 4 of those games in the postseason, that he's like completely absolved of any criticism. And that might be the case to the most part because, you don't win those games to win the national title without righting a lot of wrongs. But I do think that, when a coach is done coaching at Ohio State, at least traditionally, the first stat or the second stat that you will hear about them is their record against Michigan. And Ryan Day's is abysmal right now. So I still think that that's like a big part of, his motivation, his job description. And I do wonder, like, what if Ohio State went 2-10 against Michigan in the next 10 years, but won 2 national titles? Like, how is he viewed at the end of his run in comparison to some of the great coaches in Ohio State history?
He just won a national championship, and I don't think it boosted his like profile at all. Like I think everybody still has the same.
He's just been quiet. I think that's probably been a choice of his to some degree.
Listen, dude, the guy went on Jimmy Fallon. He went on the Kelly Clarkson show when he went to the White House. And I think all 3 of them brought the Michigan game up. Donald Trump said it at the thing. Like, I think that it bothers him to hear it because he's like, we're supposed to be celebrating. I don't want to hear that stuff. But I think that it also is a reminder to what he knows when he looks in the mirror, which is you're not 100% doing your duty as Ohio State's coach if you don't win that game. Now, the secondary aspect to that column was that if he's going to flip it, he might have to flip it during the single most difficult time that you'll have to flip it in the last 20 years because Michigan has become more serious in the talent accumulation realm than they've been since 2000. And Jim Tressel owned Michigan, and that was a more competitive series because Ohio State and Michigan were more likely talented. But when Urban Meyer went 7-0, what were there, 2 teams from the Michigan side of it that were actually like equipped from an athletic standpoint to compete in those games? Like it's a 7-0. But it's not really 7-0 on Saturday. It's 7-0 kicking their ass year round and getting better players. But if Michigan's going to get better players and now Ohio State's going to have a harder time stockpiling and keeping their talent, like he's not going to go 7-0, but he has to start winning them more than he loses them. And that's a part of the job description that he has not satisfied.
I would argue he should and could go 7-0 for the record. I think the trajectory of these 2 programs and the recruiting.
I don't know about should.
I don't know about should. Yeah, I mean,
if you've got the better team, why are you not going to win?
Well,
but they don't have that. But they won't have that much of a. I don't know if you noticed, Michigan this week is having a heck of a recruiting week, and into last week as well. And you just got the number 1 quarterback.
Yeah, Ohio State's having a heck of a recruiting century, Chris.
But Jim Harbaugh wasn't doing that. Jim Harbaugh was not recruiting top 5 classes.
The point is that you're not going to go into a game anymore where Ohio State has the 1st or 2nd most talented roster in the country, and Michigan has the 27th. Like that. There were a lot of games that Ohio State won a lot to a little when they were playing a team that had winged helmets, but was more like a Wisconsin or an Illinois than it was to an Alabama. And I don't know what Michigan's trajectory is. There's a new coach, and Jim Harbaugh's gone, and what he did was remarkable, but it's gone. I don't know, hiring the wrong coach or not having the greatest coach does have a problem on I don't know what Michigan's trajectory is for the next 10 years. What I do know is that they seem to be financially committed to winning at a level that they weren't financially committed to before. And if that matriculates into getting Bryce Underwood and 6 other top 100 players in a given cycle year over year, Ohio State might have a talent advantage, but it's not going to be a game that isn't really a game like it was in the past. Like I wrote a column after the 2020 season from Ann Arbor, or was it 2019? I think it was 19 because they didn't play in 20 and they haven't won since. That Urban Meyer killed the rivalry. It was so lopsided in 2019 from a trajectory standpoint, a talent accumulation standpoint, that Ohio State was more worried about Clemson than it was about Michigan. So the fact that we're back in this restored order of a rivalry existing, I think is good for the sport. And now I hope that the guidelines and playoff structure doesn't ruin it, but I hope that it'll prevail regardless of what happens.
Can we play a quick game? Quick game here. Good idea, bad idea. I have 2 ideas. Okay. First off, if you're Ohio State's strength staff, I don't know if they make pepper spray air fresheners. Maybe you have to have actual pepper spray, but just have the distinct odor in the weight room from the post game on the field at your home field. Just, nobody says anything. Just every time you walk in, it smells like the 5 minutes after you got embarrassed by Michigan. Good idea, bad idea.
Probably not good health-wise, but to that point though, like that whole thing happened because Jack Sawyer gave a damn after the loss, and that like it's not
when
just
was
they
that?
lost.
When was that, Chris? Was that after the loss? You said
that was when all three of us were in College Station, Texas, going on our way or at Texas A&M when that whole thing happened. Up and you and I were at walk-ons, and I think Ari and Andy were driving down.
We were at the steakhouse where you can throw peanuts on the floor.
Yeah. So
with
that whole thing,
Texas Roadhouse.
That whole thing happens, but like Jack Sawyer, like what a crazy legacy he has. Like he didn't beat Michigan, but his reaction to losing to Michigan is what got them a national championship. Ari and I were at the Cotton Bowl semifinal, and in the press conference, the Michigan game comes up again, and Jack Sawyer, I think it was, like leans down and like under his breath, I think said like the F word or something like that. Like he was so bothered by that. And so are you going to have that leadership this time around? Because you don't have anybody on that team that's beaten Michigan. And do you have anybody on that team that cares enough to beat Michigan? It sounds like like Jeremiah Smith does.
You could probably make the case that like maybe getting rid of everybody from the team that couldn't get it done is a good thing.
Yeah,
like
I kind of think that might be. You're saying beat Michigan like it's climb Everest. It's not a great team.
And that's,
that's the weird thing.
It's all that's so fascinating about it is that, to me, like, listen, people get mad at me whenever I say this, but it's true. That was the biggest upset in the history of the rivalry in terms of who won and who lost. Like, I can't think of a worse team that's ever won that game.
Michigan, I don't remember like the 95 game with Biaka Batuka. Like that was not a great team either.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a good point. It's a fair point.
All I know is what Ohio State was because you saw it for the next 6 weeks after it. They lost that game at home.
Yeah,
to a team.
Honestly, the Ohio State run only grows the significance of that upset.
But Ohio State was who they were at the end of the year all year. So for them to lose that game, do you have to like even think about the emotional gymnastics that team must have had to go through in order to get to a place where they were on the ropes like that at home? Like
it helps you got 2 weeks.
I think that the problem with Ohio State is that the same thing that happened when John Cooper was there in the 90s, which is another game that you mentioned. You build the game up so much in your head of how you have to win. Like there is a choking aspect to it. Like I don't think that anybody would like watch that game or think back about that game last year and say Ohio State did not choke. Like that was but going into that game, like we were all just talking. We weren't there because it was 21-point spread. Like it was not like the game.
It felt like, all right, Ryan Day is going to finally get this off his back. They're going to roll and go into the playoff, and it's going to be this whole thing. Like I don't think anybody in Ohio State took that game seriously. Like I didn't even Davis Warren.
Like we were 5 or 10 minutes late to the kickoff. I was like, I don't care. It'll be 21-0 by the time I didn't even think about that. And as the game went on and they started doing ISO shots of Ryan Day on the sideline and you could feel the energy coming from the stadium through the TV, I was like, everybody in that stadium is scared right now. Like everyone. And then you start playing scared and you play to not make mistakes and you don't play your own game and you run into their only strength over and over and over again and like overthink the entire thing. So like to me, my theory is that they won the national title and Ryan Day now doesn't have to like guard his house with police officers and might be able to like go into that game a little bit more level-headed, a little bit less tense. And with some new players that aren't tormented by some of the past results and actually just play Ohio State football, and it should be fine. But guys, we don't know how, like, I think that what Michigan is going to be this year is one of the biggest questions. Like, I'm with you, Dave. Like, if they went 6-6, I don't think that would be surprising. But they don't play Oregon. They don't play Penn State. If they're 10-2 average, if they're 10-2 going into that game at home with a chance to go to the Big Ten championship, it's on the road and they're playing Bryce Underwood, who will have 12 games under his belt. And like Ohio State's going to be really good, but they're not going to be what they were last year. And like the thing about it is that like, are we at the point now where we can't even analyze who's on whose team? If you wanted to play that game, you did it last year, and look what happened. Like there was such a bigger element to it. And like I think that when you argue what the best rivalry in college football is, like I think you look at this because it's almost like the mental games that Ohio State has been playing with itself got so big that they're choking now. Like
this goes back to my second thought on the good idea, bad idea. And I'm going to invoke the name of one Timothy Tebow. Okay. If you go back to the promise after the Ole Miss game, the Monday after that game, and this is my question to you, Ari.
It was right after. It was right after the game, wasn't it?
Was it right after the game, or was it the Monday after? I don't think it matters. Either way, if you go back and look at what he actually said, he didn't make any guarantees that he could not control. He just made a lot of guarantees and promises about what he would do and controlling the controllables. Not to get into the coach speak, not to get into that, but I wonder, and I'm sure Ryan Day feels this way, I'm wondering from a pragmatic point of view, Ari, if you're Jeremiah Smith, does it not serve you maybe a little bit more to talk about this rivalry and this loss in a way that, like, well, what if you have 3 offensive linemen that are out for the season and, Julian Sayin, throws out his shoulder in week 8 or whatever? Like, there's a lot of ways they could lose. There's a lot of ways you could lose this game that, like, I think those things hurt your legacy as a player and most importantly, undercut the ability to beat Michigan. Good idea or bad idea? If Jeremiah Smith rephrases that in a way that is more Ohio State focused.
It doesn't matter what he says or doesn't say.
Yes,
I don't think.
Yes, it does.
Not in this game.
Does. Yes,
Here's
it does, Chris. I think you have added an immense amount of pressure in.
There is no more pressure that can be added. There is no more pressure that can be added than by losing the last 4.
I don't know. I think you can add more pressure, and you've already shown that you did not handle the pressure of that game very well. And I think ultimately you've probably made it slightly harder.
There's no excuses for not winning that game. Michigan just won the game.
I agree with you, but it's a mental thing. And now
you've
wound those strands a little bit tighter, and I don't know that you want that.
Ohio State came into the game the last 2 years. If you think about the game, Jeremiah wasn't on campus yet. The game 2 years ago when the cheating scandal was happening, Ryan Day was playing them at home. They had lost 2 in a row. Playoff spot, Big Ten championship on the line. Michigan is
Michigan a better team.
Michigan. I'm not done yet. You'll see where I'm going. Michigan went all in, knowing that the NCAA was sniffing down its neck to win a national championship. They gave the bird to the NCAA, said we're playing these games. If you think about all the things that were at stake in that game, like in terms of off the field storylines on top of the hatred between the two, I don't know that you could even create in a lab a cocktail that's more intense in terms of mind games on that one. And like, I also look at Jeremiah Smith, and like, I think that when we look back in 20 years, he might be one of the 5 best receivers that ever walked the face of the earth. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I would look back at like July 1st or whatever, when that story ran, and go, man, but can you remember when he guaranteed? He's just talking confidently. Like, what else do you want him to say? And like, the thing that
I told him what else to say. Talk about things that you can control.
That's boring. First off, that's boring. I'm glad he gave
boring.
Manny a good quote.
I recognize it's boring. I recognize from a media perspective that it's not particularly what we would be looking.
So Andy always says this to me, guys.
Mm-hmm.
We're reporters and columnists, and we are in the business of wanting to draw or receive interesting thoughts and quotes. So when somebody gives it to us, we shouldn't discourage them from doing it, right?
Discouraging. I'm just saying, I think if I'm in his shoes, I don't know that gets you closer to the stated goal.
Did you see the video of Jeremiah Smith with Brandon Marshall that was floating around Instagram this past weekend? Where Jeremiah Smith showed Brandon Marshall, the former NFL receiver, his bank account, and Brandon Marshall goes, he has more than me. Like, it was laughing. Like, Jeremiah Smith will be fine.
I'm sure he will. But no amount of money can fix your legacy if you lose again in this round.
It does.
He already has a national title. His legacy is intact. He's fine.
A lot of guarantees don't happen, and we don't remember them. So in 2008, Michigan State. Michigan had won 6 straight games in that rivalry going into the game. It was Rich Rodriguez's first season. The year prior, Mark D'Antonio, after the little brother comments and all this stuff. Brandon Graham, defensive lineman for Michigan, guarantees a win against Michigan State. They do not win that game. Nobody remembers that he said that. And he's still beloved in Michigan history and all this kinds of stuff.
This is different, though. If they lose, it's so different.
I don't. So here's the other thing. The 3 of us have talked about this before. Ubben has, in our view, not fully appreciated the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. And we've gotten some yelling matches about this.
Yeah, I remember
on the
before
previous
Uncle
podcast.
Saturday died, him saying some really stupid stuff about it. I can't remember
stupid stuff or some. I said, and now that it's crazy, the scenario actually happened. I said, Ari, if there are Ohio State fans who would rather beat Michigan and not win a national title, they are insane and they have lost the plot.
I don't think
well, now we've had it. Ari, do you think that there are Ohio State fans wearing the scarlet and gray wherever they may be, saying, "Man, I really wish we had beaten Michigan, but then lost to whoever they would have played"?
Yes, I think there are people out there that would have rather beat Michigan and lost in the playoffs.
And those people are well-adjusted, seeing the world through
here's the thing that's
lenses.
so interesting. And I've made this mistake a lot as a podcaster in my life, like telling people how to view it. Like I tried to do that, and that doesn't go well for me no matter what. And the thing too is just like the reason why college football is so amazing is because people will tell you stories about like remembering the Ohio State Michigan game from 1961 from their front porch. And it's just like, you don't tell those people like how what's important to them, and I think that the thing that is interesting, and maybe the reason why I have perspective on it that maybe you guys don't, having not lived it, is that it is the most important thing to most people. Like, I think that 90% of Ohio State fans probably have adapted to the championship era, the playoff era, and said, hey, I'll take a national championship over winning the Michigan game 100 times out of 100. But there is probably a 15 or 10% segment of the fan base that views the championship as not perfect or fractured in a way, because for the rest of their lives, they will look back at this season and remember one of the single greatest upsets in the history of the rivalry and the choke job that happened at home. And of course, the subsequent actions on the field that, happened. Mm-hmm. So like the whole point of liking sports is to be able to talk shit to your friends and to like hold over victorious things, in like your trophy case and like every time Ohio State like claims their championship for the rest of time this year, they will have to hear from Michigan fans, well, we beat you. You guys are soft and you don't know how, like, that's not a pure champion. Like,
it's crazy. It almost happened twice in 3 years.
And Ohio State had a placard. I don't know if it's still there on Lane Avenue. After the 2014 national title that said undisputed. And like people took great pride in that because they won the title. They won it in the playoffs. They beat Bama on the way. They beat Oregon and the Heisman winners. Like, no one's going to say anything to us. And if Virginia,
other than Virginia Tech,
who cares? Nobody's going to be undefeated, but it's Virginia Tech. No one cares. Not that Virginia Tech isn't a good program, but like they're not.
And it was.
They're not.
And you don't have
they're not interacting with Ohio State fans.
Yes. Ohio State fans are acting like it's not as important anymore. Or like, if you actually look at the discourse on Twitter from Michigan and Ohio State fan, like they're talking about each other constantly, and it's because they're obsessed with it. Like, and I think the thing that you make mistakes with, Dave, is that you look at it from a rational standpoint from 1,000 feet. And I don't think that you appreciate how much it matters to people. Like, I think that like when you say, well, those people are insane for not wanting a championship, it's like, yeah, well, maybe that might be the case because winning the national title is hard and the best thing you can get. But like, that also removed yourself from understanding the depth in which people care about it.
And a lot of us, it won't be the situation for the future, but us in the Big Ten, I grew up a Michigan fan in Michigan. All that mattered was winning that game and winning the Big Ten and winning the Rose Bowl. Like national championship was, Michigan had to beat Ohio State to get to the Rose Bowl. Like that was the only way to do that.
This was the format that it always was. Like, where losing that game didn't ruin your season for 100 years, then maybe we would think about it differently. And I think that part of the reason why it's so important to people has been ingrained into your DNA for a century that if you lose the game, your skulls are dead. And maybe in 50 years, it won't be the same because all the generations of people and fans that are still on Earth will never remember a time in which losing to them mattered. But like, I also think too, the fact that we even have to have this discussion is an illustration of why expanding the playoff even more is stupid. Like, I just
that sounds like a good segue.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, I did that for you, but like, it like sucks because like, if I have to have a discussion on a college football podcast about how much the Michigan game does or should matter, then what are we doing? Like, as a sport, like that is the dumbest thing in the world to me.
It's why the first time we went through, we had this argument after Georgia, Alabama last year too, which was, in the moment, nobody, like when you're on that field, when you're in that stadium in the regular season, at least not yet, you're not thinking about the playoff and what it means. Nobody from Ohio State last year came out of that thinking like, well, we're fine. We're in the playoff. They wanted to fire the coach and they were going to the playoff. And so I hope even in an expanded playoff form, we still have that. And so that takes us into...
what's going to suck is when Michigan beats Ohio State or Ohio State beats Michigan the first time, then they play each other in the playoff, and the team that lost the first one wins the second one.
Which has happened with Alabama, Georgia a couple of times in the SEC championship and the national championship.
It bothers me too, because like everybody always says, well, Alabama lost to Auburn and won the title and no one cares. It's like, is that true? Does no one care in Alabama and Auburn? And if they don't, then that's an illustration that the rivalry isn't as good as Ohio State, Michigan. Like, that's insane.
I've brought that point up to you to say that the idea that can happen is already here. It wasn't expanding to 12. It was expanding to 4 that ended up doing that, or creating the 14 playoff. But so to Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti, he finally talked on the record about his idea for a 4-4-2-2-1 whatever playoff model. 4 automatic bids for the Big Ten and the SEC each, 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12, and then some leftover spots for everybody else. And this was important that he finally talked about this, because SEC meetings last month or in March or whenever that was, that really kind of blew up where things were. The SEC and the Big Ten, the ADs, they thought they were on the same page. And now we're kind of back to square one. And so Tony Petitti is now at least making his case publicly for why he thinks this matters. Among the reasons, he said, this is a quote that really bothered me, but he says, quote, the idea being you make play-in tournaments as well. You get 4 automatic bids. You do the play-in tournament. Maybe your top 6 teams compete for those 4 spots. And he says, quote, it just is a way to also normalize your conference schedule, because it really is hard to sometimes tell the difference among our own teams. A lot of times they don't play each other, end quote. And he's right. And that's the problem. That's why expanding to 18 and 16 team conferences was a problem and blew this whole thing up. So it's like the Big Ten, the SEC are always trying to find solutions for the problems that they themselves created. And this quote can probably apply to Indiana, who, going into the year, they played Michigan and Washington. They played for the national championship the year prior. Those looked like they were going to be tough games. Turned out they weren't. So wanted to talk about this. It was good timing too, because last time Ari and I were at the mall, we're in the food court eating, and we start just kind of going back and forth about the playoff. And I go, we should just do this on the podcast. We have yelled at each other in an open space in a mall multiple times about the playoff. I was fine with going to 12. I don't want to go any more than 12. But Ari, we've talked about the possible 16 team playoff on this podcast. You on our show have not. What do you generally think about this whole idea?
First of all, I wanted to say that like you and I have definitely screamed at each other about the 12-team playoff, and that like actually living through it, there are certain things about it that I think are better for the sport. Like I think that the Cam Scattaboo like story arc is one that we would not have experienced had it been a 4-team era, because people wouldn't have cared. I do think that like players like Cam Scattaboo deserve to be remembered and to have their story. I came around on certain aspects of it. But part of the reason why I was so vehemently against the 12 to begin with is because I knew it wasn't the end game either. Like I knew that when we went to 12, it was only going to get worse. And like my whole perspective on this, and like I can't stand the disingenuous discussion between automatic bids and 9 conference SEC games, because like it's just like completely and utterly like nonsense. Like I don't know, if you have a 16 team playoff system, then who cares how many conference games a team plays? And if there's automatic qualifiers, then who cares? And the SEC still has harder strength of schedule metrics, so who cares how? I don't know. Like it's just a pissing match of nonsense that I don't think really pertains to how we should do it. The thing I don't understand is if we go to 16 without 4 automatic qualifiers from the Big Ten and the SEC, then why are we expanding again? Like I don't understand the further expansion to begin with. I thought that the further expansion was to ensure that the SEC and the Big Ten got 8 of the spots. And then it allowed more room for at-larges and the 2 automatic qualifiers from the Big 12 and the ACC. But if they don't go to that plan, and they just do 16 best, you're just further watering down. Like, listen, if you had 16 last year, then the entire debate from last year between Ole Miss and South Carolina and who was the other one? I can't even remember the third one.
Alabama and Illinois.
wouldn't have even existed, and then you would have gotten down to even lower stakes to 4 lost. It's like, what are we doing? Like, I just
the reason,
and I think that like
the reason for expansion, the reason for expansion is because the Big Ten and SEC have so many goddamn teams, and so they need to have places for those teams to go now. Like the 12-team playoff was created when we had 5 power conferences. You know, the expansion of Texas and Oklahoma is what derailed the playoff conversation the first time until it finally came back around. And at that point, they were probably
5 power teams or conferences when Texas was in Oklahoma. It makes perfect sense.
Right. And so, but if you, the reason the Big Ten wants to do this is because it's a very top heavy conference. You're going to have Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, like probably in that playoff mix most, if not all years. And so what does that mean for Iowa and Illinois and Michigan State and all these teams? And so they need to create this play-in tournament. So an 8-4 Iowa team last year that didn't beat a top 25 team suddenly is your number 6 seed and has something to play for. That's why the SEC, that's why the Big 12 and the ACC are saying, just do 5+11 SEC, because then Alabama, Ole Miss, and them would get in anyway. You don't need to do a play-in tournament. It's the Big Ten that does, and that's why they're kind of coming up with this whole thing, because there's too many teams in these conferences.
If you are Tony Petitti and you are waving the flag for 4 automatic bids for yourself in the SEC, and then you go to your media partner, you sit down with Joel Klatt, and you say, we're not looking to be handed anything. How? I think you're literally asking to be handed something. And on the flip side of that, explain to me how if you have 4 guaranteed bids, that doesn't completely kneecap the purpose, the stakes, and the stage of big-time non-conference games. Who cares about any of these games if the conference schedule is all that matters?
Here's a quote from Tony Petitti from that interview with Joel Klatt. Yes, Joel Klatt on Fox, Joel Klatt show. I forgot to say where this interview happened. Yes, he did it with Fox, the Big Ten partner. Tony Petitti said, quote, "The goal is to play more big non-conference games, because if you're qualifying for the CFP off your conference record and then maybe a play-in game, the fact that you play a tough ACC or Big 12 team and maybe get beat on the road or whatever the result is, that might impact your seeding down the road, but it's not going to impact your access. There's 3 at-larges, so yeah, it does a little bit, but at the end of the day, that loss is
it does a little bit. My bad. Yeah, it does a lot of it.
So, but Dave,
the thing that's interesting about your thought, though, is like, do you even care about the results of the games this year? Like August 31st is a jam-packed day of awesome football, and like Ohio State and Texas are playing, and who wins the game literally does not matter. Like
that's not true. No, that's not true. You don't know what these teams are. I think first of all, the value of non-conference wins shifts a ton throughout the season, and you could say it doesn't matter. That game could very well be the difference between hosting a game and not hosting a game.
Yeah, but that doesn't rev my engine. That doesn't.
It doesn't rev your engine, but it does matter, and it does affect your path to the title. It's not the same stakes that it would have been in the past. I'm with you on that.
Wait.
But this is the trade-off that we made with the 12-team playoff.
If whoever loses that Texas-Ohio State game, they are instantly behind the 8 ball. They are not out of it. But you can afford probably 1 more loss the entire rest of the season.
What they do every year for the past 20 years already. No. That's what they always have done. Like, what do you
have you watched Texas football recently, Ari? It's not a
but if you go to 16 and you're only qualifying based on your conference record, then that game means almost
nothing. I know.
Yeah,
I know. When I say nothing, I don't mean that like there aren't benefits to winning or there aren't hardships that come with losing. But like when you lost that game in 2015, your season felt over. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I know that some people don't like that, but I like watching games with inherently large stakes. It makes it entertaining. It makes the upsets matter.
Yeah.
Like Ohio State and by the way, guys, like, I don't know if you've come around to thinking this, but like, if you've looked at how many good quarterbacks are in college football this year, like I'm guarantee you the 3-loss team's going to make it this year. I guarantee.
Maybe. But in the 16 team, we will get 3-loss teams.
But what I'm saying is we're almost we're close to a 3-loss team making it in the 12-team era. So if you're telling me that if Ohio State loses to Texas, that they can't lose 2 more times, like, oh my God, Ohio State hasn't had a 3-loss season in the regular season since 2012 when half their team was suspended. Like they don't lose 3 games. Like, so like maybe it matters to like middle tier teams like Virginia Tech or whatever. Not kind of picking on Virginia Tech in this, but they're teams that might lose 3 games. But when it comes to like Ohio State and teams like that like in Georgia, they're not going to lose 4 times. It does not matter to them. Their season doesn't matter.
But that's what I'm talking about. The 16-team proposal here. This is why it's a problem. Ohio State and Texas, and that's in that case, you're literally only playing for seeding. If your conference record is what gets you in, then the non-conference game means nothing. And so they've made this big push. Both Greg Sankey, the SEC, and the Big Ten have kind of talked about, well, non-conference games is the reason why we need to make conference records the reason you get in. Because, yes, Nebraska backed out of the Tennessee game, although that was a little bit different because they're doing their stadium. And USC may back out of the Notre Dame game. That's a problem. And Greg Sankey is telling the SEC schools, don't back out of these big non-conference games. We only have Texas, Ohio State this year and all these other games because they went to 12. That was the whole point. I feel like everybody forgets what non-conference schedules, 10 years ago used to look like.
It's like 4 times in the non-conference since 2000, haven't they? Like, this isn't like
I feel like they've played a lot.
Like, Ohio State had a big marquee non-conference game in like 8 of the last 10 years. Like,
right. You don't need to go to 16 teams automatic bids to do that.
Like,
and that's why schools they knew they were going to get some mulligans in the 12-team playoff, and attendance was not great. And you had to have bigger games because fans were suddenly not always turning up to your games.
Having bigger games is better for the fan experience because you want to watch good teams play great teams and vice versa. But if you strip the meaning of the results of them, then how big are they? Like, it's like that's the thing that I can't get over. And maybe
it's an NFL game. Then it's an NFL game, which to me, I don't get fired up for NFL Sunday like other people do. Because to me, non-gambling reasons, I'm like as a weirdly as a Detroit Lions fan, now that they're like good, when they lose a game, I'm like, all right, they got more chances. I don't go into like, oh, we got to win this game, because you don't feel that way. And college football is very much. I don't think we're there yet, but they're very much teetering on that. Where the games feel like nothing.
When you walk into a big game and it's cold outside and you're wearing your backpack and you're walking into a game that's between number 4 and number 6 or number 1 and number 3, and whoever loses season's over and whoever wins is going to, go win the conference or go to the championship or the playoff or, whatever system in the 4-team. And like the ground is like rumbling, the energy of college football at its finest, where the stakes are the highest and it's win or go home, eat or be eaten. Like, that is the peak of college football. And we will only ever get that environment now in the college football playoff. And for a lot of people who were anti-playoff to begin with, have now gotten to a point where they have stripped the spirit of the sport away in order to preserve more spots for that postseason games that, by the way, are going to be half blowouts anyway. So, like, I feel like Chris, the 16-team thing is making you feel like the 12-team what made me feel, where it's unnecessary. Like, I actually think that, like, if we really wanted to strip it back, you would go 8 and do power conference champ, automatic bid, and then 4 at-larges. And then that's it. So that all these games mattered. And I like having playoff games in October. I like having playoff games in November. I like Ohio State, Michigan being a playoff game. And I don't understand this notion, and I never will understand that notion that, like, we get more. I think that's a misnomer. I think that's fairy dust. We don't get more. We get it reverted back to the end.
Ari, quick question for you. Well, not a quick question. You, in my life at least, I listen to what people say, but you have been my life's foremost playoff expansion hater. Where if we threw 1 year of the 12 team, obviously there are going to be some changes this year with straight seeding. Did you feel like and I don't mean this as like a pointed question. I truly am asking it straight. Did you feel like you enjoyed the 2024 college football season less than you did, the average season in the rest of your life watching college football?
I mean, the whole season or just the regular season?
The whole season. I mean, the whole thing. The whole thing. Did you feel like you enjoyed college football less in the first year of the new era than you did in the 14 playoff era, the BCS era, and if it goes back to 97, the bowl?
Here's the hardest part I have.
The Federation era.
I love college football more than anything, and I watch it with other entertainment sources. I like betting on the games and doing it from that standpoint. The thing I will say that I missed is that gut punch feeling on Saturdays in October, where you're writing a column about a team that's devastated. Like, that was gone. Like, I wrote a column about Vanderbilt and they beat Alabama, and it's like, well, this is unfortunate, but Bama is still very much alive to win the SEC. And the pure emotion that came, and I wonder too, like how this will impact podcast numbers. But it's like, our best shows of the week, even back when we were at the Athletic, were traditionally Saturday night shows. And I think part of the reason why is people want the genuine raw emotion that comes with the stakes of the results of the games. And if a fan loses a game or his team loses a game and he views it the way a Detroit Lions fan does, which is, oh, well, we'll get them next time. Or, oh, well, we have 9 other chances to make it right. Your connection to the regular season diminished greatly. So, I mean, I guess that's a good question. I thought that the postseason was awesome because it was cool to see the results, but also the person in me that understands the sport knows that all those matchups for the most part were, I guess like if Texas would have lost to ASU, this whole thing would go out the window. But like, do we have to play Boise, Penn State? Like, was that necessary? Like, I just
here's my counter to this is that we've lived it, and we've experienced it. I'll give you the exact example of the game that I'm talking about. We finished covering Texas A&M, Texas in College Station, and I am sitting there at 1 a.m. watching Houston and BYU play because the outcome of that game basically affects if Colorado is going to get to play for the Big 12 championship, and I'm going to have to change my travel plans. And instead of covering the SEC championship, I'm going to go to the Big 12 and cover like Dion playing for a spot in the playoff. I loved that a lot of teams going into the last couple months or couple weeks of the season, still had a shot to get in the field. And I felt like that at that trade-off, I was good with it because yes, you're right. Those big time games, the stakes were lowered, but what we did,
like
and it's exactly what I thought was going to happen, is we drained some of the stakes from those games and spread it to more games
and the
in
upset
November.
Too.
And I like
forget
that.
about the loss of the impact of the upset too.
So you, me and Andy were together at the Buffalo Wild Wings in Ypsilanti as we watched Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And we talked about that at the time. Like, is this the end for Notre Dame? We do, like in the moment, I don't know if we felt like it diminished it all that much, especially with the way Thomas Hammock was acting afterward. But the fact that Notre Dame goes on all the way to the championship game, like, the next time around, maybe we won't quite feel the same about that. But on the other hand,
show that night by chance?
I don't probably, yeah, I think, yeah.
I said Notre Dame's still going to make the playoff that night.
Oh, I was
on that boat too. Yes.
Yeah. So, but then the other part of it is,
yeah,
the three of us were there for Texas A&M. Winner of that game is going to the SEC championship. Texas A&M still had a path to the playoff at that point, and I think that added a little extra juice to the game as well.
But
for as much as I think that's what we're forgetting is we're so much focused on the Ohio State Michigan thing because of all the things we've talked about. But for what it took from that rivalry game, it did add a lot of juice to another rivalry game. The 12-team playoff did, and that, like Chris said, A&M had a path. A&M was playing for its playoff life, and its season did end at the hands of its rival on its home field after a 13-year absence, and that added a lot of juice to that game. So I don't disagree that there are portions that are never going to be the same, but I think we're going to see stakes and we're going to see games be better than they've ever been and more relevant than they've ever been because of the 12-team playoff.
That game, by the way,
I like that trade.
Incredibly disappointing, I thought.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
That was my first
cool.
time at College Station, and I thought the crowd, although the mass of the stadium was unlike anything I've ever seen, the crowd wasn't even into it because it was just a boring game where it felt like a bully putting their hand on a little kid who was swinging, and like there was nothing, like it was like juice at all. And I understand that, but like I just don't want you and people, not just you, but people in general who are pro expansion to throw more.
Not pro expansion. Okay, with the new world. That's more.
Here's the thing.
I don't want more. I'm an 18 playoff guy. I've been that way for a long time.
Is there anybody who's a fan who likes this auto bid thing? I have seen some Ohio State people like it, but this isn't like when there was a good debate about going to 12. Is there a real debate about going to 16 among fans, or is there a mission?
People don't want it.
Is there a single? So that's the thing that bothers me too. Is there a single fan that likes that the Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore? None of the changes that are being made to the sport right now are for the fans' benefit. Like, and that's the thing that's like, so like when people like me and you, Chris, have been very, outwardly against how stupid the expansion has been. But like, I also understand too that the college football playoff is a byproduct for people to line their pockets, and all these benefits that you're trying to sell me are just like the consolation prize for them messing with the system. So like, the Texas A&M game, which would have been insanely entertaining and big and passionate no matter what, was a little bit more because we had the guys of thinking that A&M, a clearly flawed team that was incapable of winning the national championship, could in theory go to Atlanta.
But getting to the playoff means something, Ari. Let's not act like getting to the playoff is meaningless. That's where we're heading.
Our ass kicked by Georgia. That's what would have happened.
Getting to the playoff matters. I don't know how to tell you that getting to the playoff matters.
I know.
I don't think it does. I don't know.
I know it does matter, but that game didn't send them to the playoff. It kept them alive.
But it ended their road. It slammed the door shut.
I don't want to relitigate 12 as much as more just about going to 16 and how close the seem. Whatever, it's 5+11 or the auto bids. I don't know anybody who really wants this. Do SEC fans really want it that much? Have you come across fans who are like,
who's like
really when UCF goes undefeated 2 years in a row and they don't make the 14 playoff, it's like these guys deserve a shot somewhere. Yes. You can understand the conversation. No one who, other than Greg Byrne, the Alabama athletic director, who's banging down the door that Alabama absolutely 100% deserve to be in. And that's what
there was already too many teams.
You're going to be
SMU and Indiana.
That's what
SMU and Indiana did not need to be competing for.
It's what bothers me about the SEC's all up in arms about the playoff current format, as if like Alabama had to be in, the team that got blown out by Oklahoma 6-6 and lost to Vanderbilt. So like, I just don't think this move to 16, whatever way you want to do it, I don't think anybody actually wants it. And you have then made the problem, which is what Ari has always had the issue with, which is where the playoff is suddenly the only thing that matters. And if the playoff is the only thing that matters, it takes away from the regular season. It takes away from the rivalries. It takes away from everything
that matters now, Chris. Like,
I don't think we just had this whole conversation about Michigan, Ohio State.
I cannot stand this. We're
not there yet.
How much better all the other games?
We're there.
Have more meaning than they've ever had before. So that because it's the playoff, it's the whole thing. Like that's what do you think? About?
Do you think, Chris? We've already had an example. Do you think that Oregon is going to be having a 20th anniversary celebration for their Big Ten championship in 2024? Because I don't.
It's a good question. I mean,
it's not a good question. It's a simple question. They're not.
No,
that team is not going to be remembered fondly, despite the fact they were the best team in the country for the entirety of the regular season because of the way
it depends on the situation, though. Like we just talked about with Michigan, Ohio State, and a lot of these other games. I don't think in the moment, I don't think we feel that way. I think that's the thing. During the season, we weren't really thinking about the 12-team playoff. Ubben, you know this because you were doing Bubble Watch and people weren't reading it. In the moment, we're not thinking about that. I do worry if we go to 16, then during the season.
Read Bubble Watch on our website. I don't know if you had the wrong SEO headline, but like, geez. I just don't understand the concept of, I like the expansion of the playoff because then it gives more games more meaning that never would have had meaning before, while also saying the playoff isn't all that matters is insane to me. Those are two.
I think there's a middle ground, and we're not. It's not perfect. I think we're still in that middle ground where some of it still does. But if we go to 16,
you will be proud of me. You guys will be proud of me because I have come a long way in the last year.
You have. All right.
I cannot stand about the AQ thing is making the ACC and the Big 12 sign on a document that they're inferior.
That's why they don't want to, even if they would get more teams than they would otherwise. That's why they don't want to do it.
And here's the biggest gripe that I have about the whole thing, guys. We cover the sport since the inception of the playoff. We have done the mock playoff committee. We are on the call every week. We break it down every week. Can you explain what specific instance outside of one potentially that there was no right answer for, which is Florida State, Alabama, where the committee actually did something wrong or unethical?
Right.
They do it fine.
Yeah.
So why don't they just do 1 through 16 if they go to 16 or 1 through 12 and let people play games and then let the committee, who has done, by the way, an incredible job of getting to the same solutions that we all would do if we were on the committee. It's not that hard when you get to the bottom. Like, it's simple math of who has this many wins, what's their record, what's their strength. And then you add them together and compare them, and then you all get to the same result. Let the Big 12 try to get 4 in. Let the SEC try to get 6 in. Let the SEC maybe get 2 in 1 year. I don't care. But let people who are already doing a good job do it because it is subjective, but at the same time, the math carries 95% of the weight on how they make these decisions. Like there's a protocol.
All right, you've got a hard out in 5 minutes, right? All right, we're going to jump into the last segment of the show called Remember Some Guys.
What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
This is the segment of the show where we mention an old college football player and we go, hey, remember that guy? I am going to go with former Washington quarterback Marcus Tuiasosopo. One of the first big dual threat guys back in the day, kind of a bigger guy too. In 1999, he became the first player in NCAA history with 300 passing yards and 200 rushing yards in a game. Did that against Stanford at the time. They won the Rose Bowl the next year. He finished 8th in the Heisman voting. Went on to be played a little bit in the NFL. Been a coach for a while. I think it was actually with the Detroit Lions recently. But Tui. There's multiple Tuiasosopos out there. But Marcus was one of the first big ones.
On the Mount Rushmore of most fun college football names to say, maybe in the history of the sport. Ari, I will let you go first if you need to get out of here.
I'm doing this in honor of Chris, but the person who popped into my head when you brought it up immediately was Jeff Smoker, the former Michigan State quarterback who shattered all of Michigan State's passing records.
Definitely remember Jeff Smoker.
And then also too got suspended for substance abuse while also having the single greatest last name a quarterback could ever possibly have. I don't know if people remember him fondly, but when I think of college Big Ten quarterbacks from that era, was it 05 or something? 01
to 03, I think.
03, I don't know, that guy, that is Michigan State football in my head.
He helped Charles Rogers become the number 2 draft pick.
Jeff
Smoker. Yeah, and in 2002, the slogan for the team was "Where there's smoke, there's fire," because that was Smoker and Rogers, and it turned out to be true in more ways than one. They went, I think, 4-8 that year.
Yeah. And he also had a pretty illustrious arena football career. I don't know if you know that about him.
I did not know that.
Played pro for a little bit. Yeah. All right, Ubben, what about you?
I love the big boys, and I got a couple 2-pack of receivers here. First of all, we're gonna go with Jeff Fuller from Texas A&M, who was 6'4". I don't love a fade route, but I love the guys that they try to throw fade routes to and contested catches. Jeff Fuller. I remember early on in my career going to a Texas A&M practice and watching Jeff Fuller run routes from 5 feet away and just being this guy is gigantic. And the other one that came to mind was Hakeem Nicks. I also want to remember this guy. Hakeem Nicks, he's only 6 foot tall. In my head, he was
he's 6'4". I thought,
I looked it up. He's 6 foot. In my head, he was 6'6", but he's not. And I don't know how that's possible.
Because in my head, he was also 6'5".
Yes, I remember him being a giant. And he's 6 foot, but again, contested catches. Just a big, lanky dude. Him and Julius Peppers were the guys who defined 2000s North Carolina football to me. Hakeem Nicks. Remember that guy?
Yeah, he's a Super Bowl champion.
I remember that guy. Well, this was a lot of fun, guys. Getting back together just like it was old times.
Yes, sir.
Read Ari's work on On3, the Andy and Ari podcast. Good to see you, buddy. We'll hang out again soon here. But
and as you guys keep growing, I'm not going to come on anymore because I can't be caught. But keep doing your thing. I'm pretty excited that you guys have your own venture and certainly following along and love both of you and look forward to getting together down the line.
All right, see you soon, man. All right, for David Ubben, for Ari Wasserman, I'm Chris Vannini. Thank you for listening to Bunch Formation, and we will catch you in the next one.
And please, while you're remembering some guys, bring back the turnover chain. See you soon.